Greetings once again, fellow Star Trek fans. I got another wonderful little nugget to share with you. This is another Diamond Select Star Trek The Original Series item, and I'm proud to present to you the U.S.S. Defiant. This is the U.S.S. Defiant NCC-1764. This was taken from the Tholian Web. Now, if you guys remember, those of you that watch my videos, I did a similar piece from Diamond Select, and it was the Final Flight Enterprise. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll put a link to that in the description below if you want to check that one out. That one was kind of like a translucent orange plastic, and this one is a translucent green plastic. This represents the Defiant phasing in and out of the different universes. What happens with this is the Enterprise is going to investigate because the Defiant hasn't been heard from for about 3 weeks. They go into a section of space where the Reliant was last known to be, and right away Mr. Spock detects that there are anomalies with the fabrics of the space going on. They eventually find the U.S.S. Defiant, but they're unable to lock on it solidly because, according to the computers, it's not there. What's happening is the Defiant is phasing in between universes. So the captain, Mr. Chekhov, Dr. McCoy, and Mr. Spock take a lander party, and they go over to investigate. They beam over to the bridge of the Defiant. Immediately we see that the captain's neck is broken. Well, at the time we didn't know it was broken, but we could see that the captain had been attacked by another crewman. They study the, well, actually, first off, Captain Kirk calls the Enterprise and he asks for a security party because they think the people responsible would still be on board the Defiant. However, Mr. Spock checks the sensors and there's no life forms on the Defiant except for them. So Dr. McCoy checks the sickbay, Mr. Chekhov heads to engineering and life support, and they find everybody all dead. What ends up happening is, because the ship starts to fade, Dr. McCoy notices it first where he puts his hand through a body and he put his hand through a table. That's when they know they need to get out of there, so they get back up to the bridge. Captain Kirk calls to have them brought back to the Enterprise. Well, Mr. Scott tells him that the problems with the space, they're only able to take 3 back. So the captain, being the captain, wants the safety of his own people before himself, so he elects to stay on the Defiant while Spock, McCoy, and Mr. Chekhov beam back to the Enterprise. Well, what happens now is that the Defiant blinks into another universe. And while they're in a transporter room trying to bring Captain Kirk aboard, it's Mr. Chekhov that looks over and notices that the Defiant indeed had vanished. So they want to do the, because Captain Kirk was in the transporter beam locked in, they're hoping that the next interphase they would be able to beam Captain Kirk aboard the Enterprise. But what ends up happening is a Tholian ship appears, and Mr. Spock informs them of their mission. Well, the Tholian ship displaced space, and what happened is the Defiant and the rupture in space where the captain was shifted. Make a long story short, the Tholians end up attacking on the Enterprise. Mr. Spock deems it necessary for the Enterprise to defend herself and fires and disables the Tholian ship. Once the Tholian ship is disabled, another one comes in, and they go back to back and they can start constructing this web. And Mr. Spock analyzes the threads and he says that it's very strong and it's nothing that the Federation has any information on. So what happens is Lieutenant Uhura was first to see Captain Kirk. So they all think that she's crazy because of the space that's affecting everybody. Well, eventually Mr. Scott sees him in engineering, and ultimately they all see him on the bridge. And once that he's seen, they realize that the rupture in space is appearing at different times than originally thought. So to make a long story short, Captain Kirk, the time where he's expected, the new time period, they get him in a tractor beam, or the transporter beam, and utilizing the ship's power, they're thrown clear of the web because of the, I guess because it's so unstable in that section. And they're thrown free, and because the captain was still in a transporter lock, they were able to beam him aboard. This is one of the more moving episodes because they hold a memorial service for Captain Kirk. And it's pretty sad. And then Mr. Spock and Dr. McCoy are at each other, and they listen to the captain's last orders that he had recorded for them in the event of an emergency. And they're listening to it, and after they're done listening to it, you can see that Mr. Spock is troubled, and that's when Dr. McCoy says, "I'm sorry, Spock, it does hurt, doesn't it?" Ultimately, the captain is saved, though, and they're thrown free of the web. But this is the U.S.S. Defiant. Diamond Select. This is from the San Diego Comic-Con, an exclusive. And the U.S.S. Defiant NCC-1764. The Defiant goes in to another universe, and there's a couple of other shows that kind of touch on it. Star Trek Enterprise was one, and there was another internet-based series that had touched on the what happened to the Defiant, but that's a whole other video. Right now I just want to show you guys the Defiant from the San Diego Comic-Con. You can see her through the inside because I haven't opened her up yet. Incidentally, this has excuse me, let me rephrase that. This has absolutely no electronics. There's no lights, there's no sounds, there's nothing. It's just a ship. Kind of like the Final Flight Enterprise that I showed you. Typical box art, the time period with Diamond Select, you've got Captain Kirk. Star Trek, the original series Starship Legends. And as I usually do, especially with something as special as this, I will put up a lot of pictures. This, of course, is Diamond Select Toys, ART Asylum. I'll show you the side of the box. Pretty straightforward. Star Trek with the Delta logo, the original series, and U.S.S. Defiant from the Tholian Web. The back of the box shows a nice picture of the actual model. Gives some information on the ship herself. The length of the U.S.S. Defiant is 288.6 meters. She has 23 decks and a crew complement of 430. Her maximum speed is warp 9. You can see it shows the information for the ship, and it gives a little bit more information right now. In the year 2268, the Constitution-class starship, the U.S.S. Defiant, responded to a distress call from a Tholian space. Unknown to them, the call came from the other side of an interphasic rift created by the Tholians in the mirror universe. As the Defiant took position nearby, the rift began to affect the nervous systems of all crew members on board. This would lead to madness, violence, and ultimately death. 3 weeks later, the U.S.S. Enterprise investigated to find the ship. It found the Defiant and the bodies of those aboard were dissolving, disappearing into spatial interphase. The Defiant eventually vanished from our universe, nearly taking Captain Kirk with it. The Defiant then fully materialized in the mirror universe, a full century before the first Constitution-class ships would be built. The Tholians of that era attempted to salvage the highly advanced starship, but it was stolen by Captain Archer of the Terran Empire, and the Defiant quickly became the dominant force in the solar system. Again, that's a whole different story, a whole different video. So, that's the back of the box, and I don't see there's no limited numbers on this, like the Final Flight had limited numbers on it. This one does not, so without further ado, let's take it out of the box, and I'll show you what she looks like. I took her out of the box. It was a little bit, difficult, because you know how the Diamond Select, they're very, very, very secure in their toys. Excuse me, collector items. And the stand, the point of the stand, the Delta logo is sitting on top of the ship. I'm not going to take all of it out of the box, just because it's going to be a pain to get back in, and I'm going to leave mine in the box, so I prefer to not disturb it. Oddly enough, this one doesn't come with any paperwork at all. I don't know if it's because somebody took it out, or supposedly it was brand new. You can see the inside of the box, and there's nothing else in there. I don't remember if I had paperwork with the Enterprise, the Final Flight Enterprise. Anyway, enough rambling. Let me show you how beautiful she looks. You can see. Let me show her for you. Again, this has no electronics at all. It would be cool if it would light up, just because of the green. If it would look like it did on screen, that'd be pretty amazing. But I love this regardless. I think it's amazing. I love the Defiant. I love the way it looked on screen when it dissolved. And I love the way it looked in Enterprise. Like I said, that's a whole different subject, but worth checking out. Let's see the saucer section. You got the bridge. Let me show you the impulse drive. Try not to bang the camera. The nacelle pylons right back to the hangar deck. Show you the side of the nacelles. Make it look like she's flying by for you. Excuse my big ugly hands. And going the other way. You can see the ends of the nacelles, the little balls that they have. You got the radiator grills, or the radiator bars. You can see they have the detail on the inside of the nacelle pylon. You can see her back going down to the observation deck. And the Bussard collectors are in red. On the box they're just green, but on the one that I've got, the end of the Bussard collectors are painted, as well as the ring that's around the tips or the ends of the nacelles. You show you the the underneath. It's got the familiar Federation markings, the Starship. You can see where the battery compartment would have been had it had batteries. See her deflector dish. I'll show you the underneath of the saucer section. Now, the landing gear on this are actually different pieces. A lot of the times they're molded into plastic, but with these you can, I don't know if you can tell or not, but they're actually additional pieces that are attached. You see the sensor dome, and where the phasers would be. Give her that head-on, iconic kind of Enterprise kind of shot. She is beautiful. This is a really amazing thing that I was able to find, because this one is a little harder to find than the Final Flight Enterprise. I think the Final Flight Enterprise, the one that I had, was limited to 350 pieces. The one I recently showed you, the Gold Enterprise, I heard somewhere that it was limited to 100 pieces, but I'm not sure. It might have been 300. With this one, I think the site itself, the Diamond Select site, says this one was limited to 300 pieces. But this one is a little bit rarer, harder to find. You don't see these on eBay that much, or if they are on eBay, they're just a huge amount of money. I ended up getting this one off of Amazon. Sometimes you can find a deal on Amazon or on eBay, depending what you're looking for. This is the U.S.S. Defiant. Let me zoom in so my shaky hand doesn't ruin the shot. Alright, so you can see the registration, the registry number, the symbol. Down going towards the shuttle bay. You turn her around. I'll show you the other side. I made sure to get a well-lit area so you could see everything. It is held together with screws. And it's a little more translucent than the Final Flight Enterprise, meaning you can see the innards a little bit more clearer. I don't know if it's the plastic is thinner or just because it's a different color. I'll show you a few more shots of her. Again, this would have been amazing to have it light up, or maybe blink in different sections as she's phasing in and out. But like I said, I love this. I think this is incredible, and I'm glad that I was able to get this. There are a couple of them that are very rare and hard to find that I've been lucky enough to have. I just recently showed you guys the gold edition of the Enterprise for the 40th anniversary. I was ecstatic to get that. The Final Flight Enterprise, I love that one. That one's heartbreaking for me because the Enterprise is my favorite ship. And to get the Defiant and a lot of the harder to find ones are pretty great. That's another reason why I make the video, because I can take mine out of the package and I can show you. And if you have this and you don't want it disturbed, there's no reason to take it out unless you want to display it, because you don't have to worry about taking out the batteries because it doesn't have batteries. So there's no, danger of damaging from the batteries. Although you can clearly see the compartment. And this, my friends, is the U.S.S. Defiant NCC-1764. From the Star Trek Original Series episode, The Tholian Web. And as usual, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it and sharing this with you. Until the next video, take care, my friends, and continue to be safe.